the Peanut Festival, so that's where some of the rattling was felt.
Okay, so Thomas, stay right here with us, and we are going to be talking with, I believe it's Dr. Alex Beebe from the University of South Alabama, who is a geologist. Dr. Beebe, are you joining us on the phone?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So what are you hearing about this particular earthquake?
Well, I've just heard about it, so I've heard the magnitude and I've heard the location of it.
Yeah, what's your reaction to a 4.0 earthquake there near Jay, Florida? That's pretty strong for this area.
It is strong for this area, although on the grand scale of things, if you look at the earthquake magnitude scale, a 4 is still what we consider to be a very light earthquake. So once you get up over about 3 or so magnitude, that's when people are going to start to feel things. They're going to start to notice dishes shake, and they're going to hear things. Every number that you go up on the earthquake magnitude scale is equivalent to about 10 times as much shaking. So from a 3 to a 4, so 3 is just barely noticing it, to a 4, then most people are going to notice it. But you're probably not within the range of causing a whole lot of damage and destruction, which is a good thing.
Well, and we had one viewer tell us he felt it for 15 seconds. One felt it for 50 seconds. What's your reaction to that? How long does an earthquake typically last?
Well, it depends on the magnitude of the earthquake, and it also depends on how close you are to that earthquake. So if you're closer to the point where the shaking actually originates, what we call the epicenter, then you're going to have more intense shaking. You're also going to have a little bit longer duration to it. So there may be something related to those two different callers, how close they are to that epicenter.
And we have one viewer on Facebook saying that she felt it in Daphne. Somebody else said they felt like they felt it in Orange Beach. Is that possible that those people that far away could have felt this?
Yeah, it is possible. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. You know what USGS has to say about it, but they do keep track of people's perceptions of shaking related to earthquakes, and so sometimes they map these things out. So we'll just have to wait and see how far this was felt. In other words.
Hey, Dr. Beebe, this is Thomas Gieboy. How you doing today?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing well. So I remember we talked to you last year because we had a string of 3 different earthquakes all around Jay, Flomaton, and around Atmore. All of them were about a 3 or less, but it's all part of, it seems like, the Bahamas fracture seismic zone. Could you just maybe kind of touch on that a little bit? Because although we don't see earthquakes on a day-to-day basis, they're not necessarily too uncommon.
Yeah, so I guess the general idea behind it is that there is a fault network that moves through there. So there's a crack in the rocks underneath the surface, and these faults formed a very long time ago. And for the most part, they remain dormant. But over time, it's just kind of like an old house, if you want to think about it that way. There can be some settling that takes place, especially in our region along the Gulf of Mexico. We have a lot of sediment coming down. It gets deposited along the Gulf of Mexico on the continental shelf, and that causes things to just kind of settle down every now and then. And it seems like that's what we've been feeling over along that area.
Okay, so that's not out of the realm of possibility to think that maybe there could be more, or maybe this could even be related to some of the stuff that we saw last year.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be part of the same location there. So that is, you know, kind of how we map some of these faults. Is we note that there's a string of earthquakes along a certain area. We call that it's like a kind of a weak link there. It's a plane of weakness in the ground, and so if there is settling that's going to occur, it tends to occur along these same exact locations.
Okay, and then based on that zone, with this being kind of old, very old, do you think that there's ever a chance that we could see any stronger earthquakes compared to maybe what we saw with maybe possibly being a 4?
Yeah, it's hard to give any sort of predictions. In fact, it's almost impossible to give predictions. We can only go upon what we've seen in the past, and so I wouldn't anticipate anything into the strong or major category like that. But there's more than likely going to be additional earthquakes sometime in the future, I guess, is as good as I can pin it.
Yeah, you can't say, oh.
Sometime in the future, right?
Yes. Well, and that's one, you hear about aftershocks and things like that. Is this a strong enough earthquake to where you would experience aftershocks?
Again, it's just we kind of have to go on what we've seen in the past, and last time we got kind of a string of a couple of earthquakes over a 2 or 3 week period, if I'm not mistaken. And so, based on the recent history, yeah, I can say there's a chance, and I know that that's probably not super satisfying, but you know, that's kind of the best thing we can do is just know that that's an area that's prone to earthquakes.
Yeah, we were getting so many people commenting on Facebook. I mean, people are just shocked because, like we've said, we're used to tornadoes, we're used to thunderstorms, even
Yeah, we're in
hurricanes.
hurricane season right now, right?
Right now, is this a particular area where you study this particular fault line? I mean, there are fault lines all over the world, but is there anyone specifically looking at this one? I mean, I'm just curious. I didn't really realize this was a problem area as far as earthquakes are concerned.
I'm not actively involved in research along this fault. I mean, I'm generally aware of it and kind of have a good idea of the subsurface geology in our region. But there has been some research done in the past there. There was a string of earthquakes that happened 10, 15 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And actually, there was a whole team of geophysicists that brought some seismometers down there to study it in a little bit more detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was interesting when we were talking to a gentleman there in Jay, and he said it knocked him off his balance. There were pictures falling off the walls. He said just, all kinds of things happened. It was just so frightening, and people around here just aren't used to something like this.
Oh yeah, I can definitely imagine that it would be very frightening because we're just not used to earthquakes. I mean, that's not something that we really think about being on the Gulf Coast. I think if you were in a more seismically active zone like California, it may just be, kind of part of life. But here, to have the ground start shaking, I can imagine would be very, very frightening, very confusing for sure.
And since our area is really not that familiar with